I wish that I could have knocked him out at the start, but as we saw, he came to my ears and whispered, "Please be easy on me." He thought I'm Mike Tyson, and I will follow his script 40 seconds after I broke the clown's jaw. We are boxers, not content creators. I wish that I could have knocked him out at the start, but as we saw, I didn't want to put him down early. You all know I was handcuffed. I don't want to say anything that I will be regretting in the future, but all I can say now is the first 20 seconds was enough for me to end Jake Paul.
It's like this is the clearest fixed fight you're ever gonna see. But look at this guy holding his hands out and watch. Watch this. He literally shows him his chin, and he goes down. It's so fake. Look at, and he's got nothing. It's like a guy who just learned boxing.
The day after I woke up and told my wife, "Why did I do that?" I don't know. I just don't know what the hell goes on. I remember one thing. I had a very hard moment in that part of my life. But I assure you, in that age, I could have put that clown in the first round, but I sold my soul. And I'm
a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. And then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division.
I wish I could have slept him instantly, but as we all watched, he leaned to my ear and murmured, "Please go easy on me." He thought I was Mike Tyson, and I would follow his script, 40 seconds after I cracked the clown's jaw. We are fighters, not content creators. I wish I could have ended it instantly, but as you saw, I chose not to drop him early. You all know my hands were tied. I won't say anything I might regret later, but I'll say this now, the first 20 seconds were enough to finish Jake Paul. This looked like the clearest fixed fight you'll ever witness. Look at him lifting his hands and watch. Watch closely. He literally presents his chin and drops. It's beyond fake. Look again, he has nothing. He looks like someone who learned boxing yesterday. The next morning I woke up and told my wife, "Why did I do that? I don't know. Why am I throwing up? What the hell happened?" I remember one thing clearly. That period of my life was brutal. But I swear, at that age, I could have stopped that clown in round 1. But I sold my soul. And I'm the guy who just had a match that felt like light sparring with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. Then you step in with one of the scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. I replay it constantly, and every replay makes it worse, because this wasn't just a fighter getting hurt. This was a business model smashing into reality at full speed. When that happens, people don't rush for truth. They rush to protect leverage. You can feel that protection right now in everything not being said. If it were clean, there'd be no hesitation, no hedging, no carefully polished statements. Instead, we get noise. Loud noise meant to bury the quiet questions that refuse to die. He did well for someone boxing less than a decade. He had no real professional opponents except Tommy Fury, who was actually world class. I barely remember the Tommy Fury fight. He lost a close decision, but it was solid. It really was solid. Here's my honest take, and yes, it's uncomfortable. Jake Paul didn't build a boxing career. He built a controlled environment, and controlled environments only survive until someone refuses to cooperate. Anthony Joshua refusing wasn't heroic. It was normal, and normal terrifies systems built on exceptions. The moment Anthony Joshua treated him like any other opponent, the experiment collapsed. That tells you everything this really was. I don't remember much of the fight. I blanked out. I remember coming back after round 1. Then the next thing I remember is Jacob doing something strange. What was he doing in the ring? Oh, that little bow at the end. He bowed. That's the last thing I remember. The next day I woke up and told my wife, "Why did I do that? I don't know. I truly don't know what went wrong. What did I think of his power? I don't remember, but my body was wrecked. My chest, my stomach, everything hurt. People keep calling it bravery. Sure, stepping in takes courage. But bravery without wisdom is liability. Liability is what networks insure, not fighters. That's where it gets uncomfortable. Because someone approved this knowing the gap, knowing the risk, knowing the outcome. Approval creates responsibility, and responsibility is being dodged. You feel it every time the conversation shifts back to toughness instead of judgment. He's also crazy, right? Fighting a 2-time heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, built like a Greek god, a one-punch killer. Standing across from Joe Rogan talking about this moment exposed what became obvious from Anthony Joshua's performance. Don't get it twisted, the injury matters, but the precedent matters more. Once a brand tests itself against elite violence, you can't unsee it. Every influencer fight now lives in Anthony Joshua's shadow. That shadow is long and unforgiving. promoters know it. They lost plausible deniability. The ceiling isn't unknown anymore. We saw it. It's concrete. Someone hit it head first. You can only take so much. That shot from Anthony Joshua felt like 10 punches in one. Real damage. What bothers me most isn't the knockout. It's how predictable the fallout was. Boxing history is full of moments where entertainment went too far and paid later. First laughter, then curiosity, then concern, then regret. We're stuck between concern and regret. That's when real stories leak, when people distance themselves and rewrite timelines. I don't buy the idea anyone was naive. That's insulting. These are professionals. They understand force, damage, and risk curves. That means the gamble was intentional. Intentional gambles imply expected losses. So who was supposed to lose? Because it wasn't meant to look like this. Not this final. That gap between expectation and outcome is where truth leaks. The Mike Tyson angle still eats at me. Memory loss isn't a throwaway line. It's a flare. Flares aren't accidental. Physical, psychological, or something deeper. It never got resolved. Just buried under hype. Anthony Joshua's knockout dug that grave back up. When graves reopen, people ask who put the body there. And in this case, the bill came due in bone and metal. And that bill is now being passed around praying someone else grabs it. I don't think Jake Paul is evil. I think he's a product, and products get pushed until they snap. And when they snap, the manufacturer blames the user. The user blames the environment. And the environment blames chance. And chance becomes the convenient villain. But chance doesn't schedule fights. People do, and people make decisions. And decisions have consequences, even when nobody wants to claim them. There's also a chilling effect coming. You can already feel it. Fighters will hesitate. Commissions will ask tougher questions. Insurers will raise eyebrows. And suddenly, the easy money doesn't look so easy. And when easy money dries up, loyalty evaporates. And that's when stories start changing. And I guarantee some of the praise we heard before will quietly turn into distance. Fans aren't stupid either. They enjoy spectacle, but they respect authenticity. And Anthony Joshua delivered authenticity in its rawest form. And once fans taste that again, it's hard to sell them a watered-down version. And that's a problem for anyone whose business depends on blurring lines, because the line just got redrawn in permanent ink. I'm just hoping after this Floyd Mayweather fight, maybe we can run it back. He did well, but I want another shot. Is that something you'd be interested in writing? Yeah, I would. I would be interested in that. Mike Tyson himself, in the wake of Anthony Joshua's knockout, began reflecting. I keep replaying it in my head. And the more I replay it, the worse it gets. Because this wasn't just a fighter getting hurt. This was a business model colliding with reality at full speed. And when that happens, people don't rush to tell the truth. They rush to protect leverage. And you can feel that protection happening right now in the gaps of what isn't being said. Because if everything were clean, there'd be no hesitation, no hedging, no carefully worded statements. And yet, all we're getting is noise. Loud noise designed to drown out the quiet questions that won't disappear. Here's my honest take. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. Jake Paul didn't build a boxing career. He built a controlled environment. And controlled environments only work until someone refuses to cooperate. And Anthony Joshua refusing wasn't heroic. It was normal, which is exactly why it caused panic. Because normal is dangerous to a system built on exceptions. And the second Anthony Joshua treated him like any other opponent, the experiment collapsed. And that tells you everything you need to know about what this whole thing really was. People keep saying bravery, and sure, stepping in the ring takes guts. But bravery without wisdom is liability. And liability is what networks insure against, not fighters. And that's where I get uneasy, because someone approved this knowing the gap, knowing the risk, knowing the possible outcome. And when approval exists, responsibility exists. And responsibility is being actively dodged right now. You can feel it in the way everyone keeps shifting the conversation back to toughness instead of judgment. And don't get it twisted, the injury matters, but the precedent matters more. Because once you let a brand test itself against elite violence, you can't unsee the result. And every future influencer fight now lives in Anthony Joshua's shadow. And that shadow is long and unforgiving. And promoters know it, because they just lost plausible deniability. They can't say the ceiling is unknown anymore. We saw the ceiling. It's concrete, and someone hit it head first. What bothers me most is how predictable this was. Not the knockout, but the fallout. Because boxing history is littered with moments where entertainment pushed too far and paid later. And those moments always start with laughter, then curiosity, then concern, and finally regret. And we are squarely between concern and regret right now. And the regret phase is when the real stories come out, when people start distancing themselves and rewriting timelines. I don't buy the idea that everyone involved was naive. That's insulting. These are professionals. They understand force. They understand damage. They understand risk curves. And that means the gamble was intentional. And intentional gambles imply expected losses. And I keep asking myself, who was expected to lose here? Because it clearly wasn't supposed to look like this. Not this definitive. Not this final. And that mismatch between expectation and outcome is where truth leaks. The Mike Tyson angle still gnaws at me, because memory loss isn't a throwaway comment. It's a flare. And flares don't fire accidentally. And whether it was physical, psychological, or something more complicated, it added an unease that never got resolved. Just buried under hype. And now Anthony Joshua's knockout dug that grave back up. And once graves reopen, people start asking who put the body there in the first place. I also think fans are underestimating how much this rattled fighters behind the scenes, because pros watch tape differently. They don't see drama. They see timing, distance, intent. And what they saw was a guy realizing too late that the rules had changed. And that realization is terrifying, because it means the safety net was imaginary. And imaginary safety nets are how careers end abruptly. There's a reason Joe Rogan's tone changed, and it wasn't morality, it was recognition. Because he's seen enough damage to know when something crosses from sport into warning sign. And his plea to retire wasn't about Jake Paul. It was about stopping the next headline, the one nobody wants. And if you think that headline wasn't already imagined by people in suits, you're fooling yourself. They game out worst cases for a living. What we're watching now is reputation management in real time. And reputation management always looks calm on the surface and frantic underneath. And the longer it takes for clear answers to appear, the more suspicious it becomes. Because clarity should be easy if everything were straightforward. And yet nothing about this feels straightforward. It feels layered, negotiated, filtered, and that's never a good sign. I keep coming back to Anthony Joshua's role, not as a villain or hero, but as an accelerant. Because he didn't create the problem. He exposed it faster than planned. And exposure is dangerous, because it removes control. And control was the real currency here. Control over opponents. Control over narratives. Control over outcomes. And Anthony Joshua took control away with one punch. And control rarely gets surrendered peacefully afterward. Some people will say this is just boxing. Injuries happen. Move on. But that's lazy, because context matters. And this context is soaked in marketing language that promised legitimacy without earning it. And when marketing outruns reality, someone pays the difference. And in this case, the bill came due in bone and metal. And that bill is now being passed around, hoping someone else picks it up. I don't think Jake Paul is evil. I think he's a product, and products get pushed until they break. And when they break, the manufacturer blames the user. The user blames the environment, and the environment blames chance. And chance becomes the convenient scapegoat. But chance doesn't schedule fights. People do. People make decisions. And decisions have consequences, even when nobody wants to own them. There's also a chilling effect coming. You can already sense it. Fighters will think twice. Commissions will ask harder questions. Insurers will raise eyebrows. And suddenly, the easy money doesn't look so easy. And when easy money disappears, loyalty dissolves. And that's when narratives start shifting. And I guarantee you, some of the praise we heard earlier will quietly turn into silence. Fans aren't dumb either. They enjoy spectacle, but they respect authenticity. And Anthony Joshua delivered authenticity in its rawest form. And once fans taste that again, it becomes nearly impossible to sell them a watered-down version. And that's a problem for anyone whose business depends on blurred lines, because that line just got redrawn in permanent ink. I keep wondering what happens if Jake Paul comes back, not physically, but mentally. Because once you know you can be shattered like that, the ring feels different, heavier, closer, and confidence turns performative. And performative confidence gets people hurt. And that's not speculation. That's history. And history is ruthless about repeating lessons. There's also the legal and regulatory side quietly looming, because commissions hate embarrassment. And this was embarrassing on a systemic level. And when regulators feel embarrassed, they start tightening screws. And tightened screws rarely stop with one case. They ripple outward, and ripple effects are where unintended consequences live. What scares me is the idea that we're only seeing the clean version of this story, the part safe for public consumption, while the messier conversations happen behind closed doors, where blame is negotiated and narratives get aligned, because those conversations shape the future far more than any press conference ever will. I don't think this ends influencer boxing overnight, but I do think it poisoned the well. And poisoned wells don't announce themselves. They make everyone sick slowly, and you don't realize it's over until nobody wants to drink anymore. And that ending comes quietly, not with a bang, but with absence. At the end of all this, what sticks with me isn't the punch, it's the pause afterward. That strange collective inhale when everyone realized something irreversible had happened. And irreversible moments don't get undone by spin. They just sit there, waiting. And the longer they sit, the heavier they get. So yeah, this is my opinion. Messy, uneasy, unresolved. Because that's exactly how this feels. Unresolved. And until we get honesty instead of choreography, this story will keep mutating. And every mutation brings new suspicion, new doubt, new fractures. And fractures don't heal on their own, they spread. And right now, it feels like we're standing on something that hasn't finished breaking.